So hello everyone, welcome to recitation 8. And in this week's recitation, we are going to study about JavaScript functions, right? So let me just quickly go through the agenda for this recitation. So we are going to understand about JavaScript functions, creation and modification of the functions. We are going to perform two different tasks or the problem statements. The first one includes creation of a function to cube a number. And the second one is just that we are going to use the functions to calculate the compound interest, right? So I think it's going to be quite fun, loving to just solve the problem statements using the JavaScript functions. And I would, again, like always, strongly suggest you to just open up your systems and work simultaneously with me so that you can just understand it in a more better manner, right? So without wasting any time, let's just quickly get started. And before that, I just wanted to let you guys know that yeah, for this week I'm just uploading this video lecture a little late. Like usually I do it before Tuesday for every week, but for this week I think most probably you guys would be able to watch it live a bit on Wednesday evening or night. And the deadline for my attendance for every recitation lectures is Sunday 11:59, like always. But for this week, I'll just extend the deadline for the attendance. I'll keep it as Tuesday 11:59 p.m. So make sure you can just watch the video according to your own convenience. And just feel free to contact me if you guys have any queries or questions or concerns, right? Because I see like most of you guys are like, as we have entered in our midterm, like we have passed the half of the semester, right? So let me know if, because as this is the asynchronous section, right? So if you still guys are confused or where can I find the resources, I think all those stuff should be clear right now. But if you have any queries regarding my office hours or lab support hours, please feel free to contact me and we can just connect one-on-one and just discuss the issue which you guys are facing, right? So, and yeah, let's just get started with the topic of JavaScript functions, and we'll just look at the applications why JavaScript functions are needed, right? So first things first, uh, some of you guys might be familiar with the term called function, but I believe or assume that most of you guys come from a non-CSIT background, and for you, you are just encountering this word for the first time, right? So let's just understand in a more simpler and basic manner that what is JavaScript function. So over here in front of you, there's a definition which says a function is a block of organized reusable code that is used to perform a single related action, right? So, I mean, let's just look and understand in a more simpler manner, right? So here it says a JavaScript function is like a small machine in your code. You you can give some kind of information or sometimes none, and it does take that information and perform some kind of tasks and give you the result back, right? Over here you can use this machine as many times you want without having to build it again. So in short, I can say that a function is some kind of a machine wherein we can just put the information in it. It will give back us a result and we can use that machine again and again without having the need to create one, right? So here's a basic syntax of JavaScript function, which says that function is our keyword. Just like there are different kind of keywords called where, right? Where is a keyword. So over here, the function is a keyword in JavaScript, which is used to define a function. And there, after that, there comes a function name. You can write it anything you want, but it's always a good practice to name our JavaScript functions accordingly or appropriately with the intended requirement or the implementation, right? And then inside these brackets, there comes parameters. Don't worry about now, but we are going to learn about parameters. What are the importance of parameters? Why do we need them? But for now, just remember this is the basic template or the syntax of just defining a function, right? Under the curly braces over here, we just put the required statements, like which for which we want to use that function, right? The logic or the code implementation over here. And here's the return statement, which just simply returns the result or the output of the function, whatever the function is doing. Just don't forget the curly braces, as you know, like it depends on programming languages to languages, but let's say for example Python, in Python we don't need the brackets, there everything works on the basis of indentation. But in programming languages like JavaScript, the brackets are very important, right? To just know that what kind of statements, or just to just separate the result or the code, right? In if statements or for loops and everywhere, like we use the brackets. So just don't forget to use the brackets or the semicolons wherever needed, right? So before that, like if I just want to show you like very simple example that why do we need functions over here. So let's say there's a task and I tell you guys that you need to create a JavaScript code wherein just have to perform the addition of two numbers, right? So add two numbers, just come up with a JavaScript code. And you guys can say like, okay, I'll just define two variables, create two variables. And let's say I'm just doing it in a hard-coded manner. So what do I mean by a hard-coded manner? Like, so let's say over here, I'm just taking the variables and initializing it with two values over here, 10 and 20. These are hard-coded, right? I'm just I have just predefined the values, right? I'm not just taking the values dynamically from the user and saying that, hey, the user can enter any values by using the prompt function. Right? If you guys remember, prompt function, which we used in last week's recitation, right? So just like obviously you guys would be knowing that what do the prompt function do, right? So here I'm not using the prompt function. For example, let me just come up with a very simple code to just add two numbers. Let's say if I declare one more variable called sum, and inside that variable I want to just perform the addition of the two numbers, num1 plus num2, right? Again, don't forget to put the semicolons, right? And then I say that console.log sum, and the variable sum, I'm just passing it over here, right? So this is a simple code for just performing the addition of two numbers. Now let's say tomorrow I ask you guys to just perform the same operation, but for not the numbers 10 and 20, but two other numbers, right? And I just have to keep the numbers this or the variables this as preserved, right? So what you guys will do, okay, no problem. I'll just write another code, which and for which I'll just change the variable names, and I'll change the numbers to 30 and 40. Again, over here, num3 and num4, not 2. And some 2 here, some 1, let's say 2, some 1. Yeah. So this is another code, right? To perform the same operation, but we are writing another code. So don't you think like this is not a very good practice or idea to just increase the code length every time you just have to perform the same operation, right? Does it make sense? So for this, we have something called as functions, because with the help of functions, what we say that, hey, I just want to write a function one time which just performs the addition of two numbers, and then you can just use that particular function as many times as you want, irrespective of the value of the numbers, right? So in this way, it just saves our lives. It is very like it improves the code usability and the readability, and it's very fast, right? So of course that's the best reason, and because of that we use JavaScript functions. So I think let's just dive it into our editor without wasting time, so that and just experience the practical feel of JavaScript functions, right? So this is our task one for the day. And again, before moving to our task, if you just want to take a reference from our favorite site, W3 Schools, you can just do so by implementing the our different kind of examples over here and seeing the basic definition and syntactical things over here, right? So I think we discussed all these things over here, like a JavaScript function is a block of code designed to perform a particular task. Okay, JavaScript function is defined with the help of the keyword called JavaScript, followed by the name of the function. And in the parentheses, there's something called as parameters. We just write the parameters over here inside the parentheses or the brackets, right? So this is the basic syntax of a function. And there's this example over here, which just multiplies two numbers, right? So this is, so let's just see the demo of this example over here, right? So let's say this is our function, right? Function keyword, and the name of the function over here is my function. You see, guys, this thing, this is the name of the function, my function. And inside the parenthesis, there are two values, p1, comma p2. These things are called as the parameters. We are passing some kind of parameters to our function whose name is my function. And then we are simply returning the multiplication of those two values, which we are taking as the parameters, right? So, so at the end, like this function, my function is just simply doing the multiplication of two numbers, and it's just returning that particular value, right? So then I'm saying that, okay, we are creating another variable called result, which says my function 4, comma 3, right? And we're just simply saying that document.get element ID demo.inner.html. Now, if you guys are not aware of this line, let me just quickly explain you that what exactly this line is doing, right? So document.get element by ID is saying that, hey, take the HTML element with the ID demo over here and like take it and just dot inner HTML. It means just it will simply put it or change the content in the web browser DOM over here in the output over here, HTML output. It will just simply write that particular value, whatever value we are assigning to this thing. It says is equal to result, right? So whatever value is present inside the variable written, it will just simply take that value and fetch it as the output over here in our HTML DOM browser, like over here, output, right? But it is simply targeting with the help of ID. So get element by ID, and the demo ID is given to the paragraph tag over here. Notice that this is the tag, right? So over here, I'll come to this point over in a later part whenever we are working on task 1, because there's a small catch over here which I just want to explain to you guys. I'll come it in a while, but for now, this is a basic demo or the one demonstration of a function in JavaScript, right? So in this way, if I run this thing, of course, there's an output called 12, and that's done. We got that with the help of function because the user has passed number 4, comma 3, right? Let's say I write 10, comma 5 and perform run. So it comes to 50, right? So you do not have to create the code again and again, right? This whole function, we are reusing it again and again, right? By just implementing it one time. So I think this is the power of functions in any kind of programming language. And like everyone in real lives always come off like in their code logics, use functions day by day, like every day, right? So it just helps to work things in a very smooth manner, right? So it just saves our time. So further moving on, let's just work for our task 1, which is to create a program that calculates the cube of a number. So quickly just download the resources which I've shared with you guys. If you just go to our file section in Canvas, and if you just go to 00_ recitation information over here, inside that there's a folder of my name, like always. Just click on that, and then afterwards there's a folder called recitation8. So here I've uploaded the presentation and the resources over here. There's a zip file called resources.zip over here. Just download this thing and you can work simultaneously with me. So over here I've already I have already opened the file in my code editor. So over here there's a shell.html file, right? Like it says that write the basic shell.html, right? So I've just created the template file for you so that you need not have to create it from scratch, right? And again, just a side note that as this recitation is related to the JavaScript functions topic, but if you just need to understand or learn more, then you can just find the content on chapter number 19 on your fluency textbook, or of course you can just refer to different kind of third-party websites on the internet, right? You can just take references wherever you want. But again, just note that this is very important, that don't use anything which is beyond the scope of this recitation or the materials which are uploaded by a professor, or anything which is taught by a professor or by me, right? There are tons and tons of things out there, but you need not have to understand or implement everything which is not just like taught in your classes, right? You need to understand that would just result into the loss of the points. So make sure that you are taking references are fine, but just make sure that you know what you are doing and just use the information or the things which are covered in your recitations and lectures, right? So moving ahead, like if you have your shell.html file over here, and then we are just going to come up with a very simple JavaScript program in which we are going to create our first function, which will just definitely cube the number. So in layman terms, what is a cube of a number, right? Everyone is aware. Like if I say if I say there's a number called 2, what is the cube of this number? Of course, 8, right? 2 raised to 3. 2 raised to 3. So basically the formula is, if there's a number x over here, and if I say the cube of the number x should be stored inside the variable y, then we can write something like this, right? X raised to 3 is the result, right? But in JavaScript, we cannot perform this operation by just implementing it in this way, right? Like the exponential form, right? So for that, what we can do is, let's say over here, the cube of the number like number 2 is 8, right? I can also write it in this form, right? 2 multiplied by 2 multiplied by 2 equals to 8. Same thing, right? In the same manner, I can write it, come up with a short, simple formula that, okay, or y equal to x times x times x. Does this make sense, right? Of course, we can write it in this manner also. So in a similar manner, we can just write, we'll just implement this particular formula into our JavaScript syntax, and we'll just create our first function and just see the output, like whatever we are getting. Over here, you can just see the formula, right? The cube of the number is like got from this formula. So in our JavaScript, there's this file, right? And then I've uploaded another file called cuba.html. So in that, over here, let me just comment this thing and see that, okay, just add the title, that cube power function, anything appropriate. And then notice that inside our script tags over here, we write our JavaScript like always, right? And the script tag over here is inside our body part. So there's a function over here. And if you just see the syntax is that, again, just write the comments. It's always a good practice, right? I say over here, I can just be basically write a function to a function which calculates the cube of a number. Does this make sense? Yeah. So function is the keyword. The name of this function is cuber, C-U-B-E-R, right? And inside the parenthesis, I'm passing a parameter. What is a parameter? So parameter is something which is passed to a function with the help of which the function can perform the implementation if the function is required to have that particular value. Getting it? For example, over here, in order for a function to calculate the cube of a number, the function needs a number, which would be passed by the user, right? So for that, I'm gonna say that k function, take this value and just compute and or use that value and just give me the end goal or the result for which the function is created. So function says, okay, I'm just taking this parameter, which is called num, and inside that num, I'm passing some kind of number. The function uses that number and calculates the cube of that number and gives me as the result by using the keyword called return. For example, over here, I'm just declaring another variable called my number equal to 7. This is a hard-coded manner, right? I can, of course, ask it from the user by using the prompt function also, and I can store it inside in another variable. But over here, I'm just using another variable and storing a value called 7. And then I say, okay, while calling the function, you just have to put this value or pass it as a parameter, and the function will take that value. Okay, awesome. So for now, we have created the function. So let's just quickly see the output of this program, right? Whoa, awesome. Do you guys see anything? I think it's blank, right? How come? Like we created the function, right? So how come the output is blank? Okay, something wrong, right? So why won't anything show up when you run the file in the browser? What's missing? Of course, as a matter of concern, right? So let's just understand that what happened. So it says that the function was never called, only declared. Just as how we create the variables, we declare the variables, and initializing the variables is a different part, right? If I write, let's say for example over here, if I write where number, that's it. And then in the next line, if I write number equal to 10. So first over here, I am declaring a variable, right? And over here, I am initializing the variable. Initializing, right? So just in the same way, if we have like defined a function or declared a function, like let's say there are parameters over here. It can be any number of parameters, but for now, the function name, and the parameters over here, we written something, right? And then here are the statements. Awesome, right? But then I have to call this function, right? It's very important because then like other than that, how the function will get invoked. So it's very important for me that whenever we have created any kind of function, we have to always call that function so that it will get invoked and we will be able to get the intended result of that function, right? So here inside our code, I just simply have to say that, okay, document.write, which will just simply write the content in our browser HTML output and say that, okay, this is the basic syntax. So let me just explain it, right? We are using the string over here, right? So the cube of, and here, notice that the plus sign is just the concatenating operator. We use the plus sign to just merge different kind of things. So over here, the cube of this plus sign, this my number variable is a variable, right? It is not a context which we want to display it as it is. So we are going to concatenate it with the help of plus sign, and that will not come inside double quotes, but that's a variable. And inside that variable, we have stored a value called as 7, right? So we are saying that, okay, the cube of 7, which is stored inside the variable my number, is now in this part over here, we are calling the function. It's very simple. Like, how do we call a function? We use the function name and we just pass the parameters for that particular function. So function name and the parameter which we want to pass to our function. So here the parameter is my number. Now, what is present inside my number? The number 7, right? So what I mean over here is that, okay, I'm just saying that, hey, I want the number 7 to be passed to the function cuber, and let just that function perform the operation on number 7 and give me the output as a result of the cube of the number 7. So that's how it works. Like, we just call a function, the function will get invoked. And if I just save the file and if I see the output over here, notice that it says the cube of 7 is 343, right over here. Let me just zoom it for you guys. The cube of 7 is 343, right? So that's the beauty of functions, and we were able to get the proper output, right? Just a quick question for you guys. Just think and let me know. Over here, notice that here the name of the parameter is my number, but over here the name of the parameter is num. So some might just wonder that how can this be possible, right? Like, shouldn't be the name of the parameters same? So the answer is that it's not necessary. You can have different names for the parameters when we're passing, right? It just like this, both things are not dependent on each other. Yes, the number of parameters should depend, right? And they have some kind of relationship between them. Like, let's say you're passing 3 parameters, then over there you need to define 3 parameters because you have to catch. But for that there are different kind of variations and types. But for now, let's just understand about the naming convention. So let's say if I'm passing my parameter through a variable called my number, this will be caught by our main function definition, in which I can use any name for the parameter, unless and until it will by default get to know that, hey, while calling the function, someone is passing a value, and it will not get attached with the naming convention, right? It will just simply say that, okay, one value is coming on, I need to just catch or hold that value. And for that, I may define my own name of the parameter, right? So here we have created the num. But notice that over here, once we define the name of our parameter, we got to use the same parameter throughout the function definition inside it while implementing, so that it will obviously get to know that over here, let's say I'm just taking the number 7. So while returning it, I'm saying num into num into num, right? So that's the thing with the parameters and how do you return it. Again, why do we return, like why there's a need to write the return word, right? So return keyword is important because with the help of that, the function would be able to return the final value after doing its work or the computation, right? So when we are calling, so it will give the answer in the form of return, right? So that's how it works. So I think this is clear. A very easy example of just understanding the demonstration of a function with having a very simple problem statement of just calculating the cube of a number. So ahead, let's see what we have. Like, okay, yeah, basically these are the fixes of our initial early problem which we faced, right? We just have to, how to input a number to perform the calculation. So we just did it in a hard-coded manner. It's up to you guys. How do you just want to put the input to the function? How to call a function? I just explained that, okay, it's very simple. You just write the function name, and in the parentheses, you pass the appropriate number of parameters. And how to display a message to the user. So this is the syntax. How do you just display it, right? So moving ahead, let's just go to our task 2. And I believe that things are going smooth and you guys are just understanding with me. If not, of course, just try to pause this video, just rewind back, or still, if there are any kind of issues or doubts, definitely feel free to just ask me this week during my lab support or the office hours, right? So this is the task 2, wherein we have to create a function to calculate the amount of money accumulated based on a deposit, interest rate, number of periods per year the interest was being paid, and the number of years the money was in the bank. Okay, so I think the problem statement is pretty straightforward. We have our formula in front of you, because I'm sure, like me, most of you guys would not be knowing the formula of compound interest. So over here, there's the formula which says money equal to C times 1 plus R by N, the whole raised to N times N. So here, of course, the meaning of this all like letters are given over here. So C stands for, C is nothing but the amount deposited, T is the number of years deposited, and R is the annual interest rate. And lastly, the N is the number of interest payments per year. Okay. So like, let's just quickly get started with the actual demonstration or implementation of our JavaScript to create a function which will just calculate the value of our compound interest, right? With the help of this formula. So again, inside our editor, in the resources which I've shared to you guys, there's a file called as inrate, right? So notice that over here in inrate.html, intrate, we have a function, of course, called intrate. And again, notice that the naming convention of the function, it's always recommended and a good practice to just name the function accordingly, depending on the goal of the function. For example, if I want to create a function which just adds a 2 number, I can write the function name as sum or something like that, right? But of course, I wouldn't write anything which is not appropriate, right? So in the same way over here, notice that you guys are writing the name of the function. Oh, just give me a moment. My voice should be more clear right now, because I just got to know that my head jack was not attached to my laptop, but never mind. I hope my voice was clear till now. But over here again, yeah, the name of the function is int rate, and I say that, okay, inside this function, just pause this video and let me know that how many parameters do we need or we are passing in this function. Just look at the function and just let me know. 3, 4, 5, how many? 4, right? So for those who said 4, you're right, of course, because over here we are dealing with 4 values, C, T, R, and N, of course, right? So here inside our function, I'm saying that, hey, just pass this 4 parameters, and then we'll just work on our formula. But before that, going inside the function implementation, let's just focus over here what we are doing. So again, I'm just simply taking the input from the user with the help of our prompt function, right? I'm saying that, okay, I'm coming up with this 4 variables, origin, amount, num years, and in rate, numpay here, over here, right? So I'm saying that, okay, enter the initial deposit, enter the number of years to be deposited, enter the annual interest rate, and enter the number of interest payments per year. So this is simply the prompt which it's gonna ask to the end user while just seeing the output, right? And again, document.write, the total amount calculated. I'm calling the function int rate right over here, and I'm passing the 4 parameters over here which we got and which we created over here. It's the same 4 parameters. And again, when I'm passing the 4 parameters while calling the function takes those 4 parameters as an input, and the name need not necessarily to be the same. I'm just catching those 4 or holding those 4 parameters because we are going to use those 4 parameters to calculate the compound interest, right? So here I'm saying that, okay, there's a variable called total deposit over here, total dip, and we are using something called as math.round because the function is just to simply, it will just round off the value, right? And then inside that, notice that our formula is C times the whole. So focus on C. So I'm saying that, okay, C times, but now there's something called as whole raised to some value, right? So how do we implement in JavaScript, right? So for that, there's something called as math.pow, POW, math.power, right? So we say that, okay, math.power will take different kind of parameters. The first one is the whole value for which you want to put, and the second parameter, it will take the value for which we want to do the raise to thing, right? Over here, this value, n times t. So first parameter takes 1 plus r by n, and second is n times t. That's it. Easy, simple, straightforward. Just make sure and be alert about writing and opening up the brackets over here, right? That's it. And you just gonna written the total deposit amount which you are calculating in this function. That's it. And the function will return this amount. So let's say if I just run this function and see the output. So it's saying that, okay, enter the initial deposit, let's say 100, enter the number of years, 1, annual interest rate 10%, so let's say 0.10, enter the number of interest payments per year, 1. So the total amount accumulated is $110, right? So we got that value, and I believe it's correct. You guys can just perform the calculation with the help of the values which I just gave as an input by using compound interest formula in your own system. So in this way, we were about to get the value of compound interest with the help of our function. So notice that how it was so easy to just come up with the function. Let's say tomorrow I have some different kind of values, right? I did not have to write the function again and again or the code, but we just create the function one time and we just reuse it again and again, irrespective of the values of the different kind of fields like C, T, R, and N, right? So I think just this is the code for that. But again, here's a catch to it. In last week, we learned about our, okay, cancel. Just give me a moment. So in last week, we learned about something called as event-driven programming, right? Wherein we created a form which were taking different kind of input fields, right? So why not we have something kind of that for our compound interest calculation, wherein the user can enter different kind of amounts in different kind of text fields, and then why not we have a button on which you would have the final amount calculated and displayed to the user, right? Because that would make more sense rather than having in a very dull manner wherein we are just asking the user different kind of values in the form of dialog boxes using the prompt function, right? So there's another file called as iterate for students.html over here. So notice that over here, if I just quickly run this function, just give me a moment. Wow. So this is some good stuff, right? Which looks appealing to the end user because we have 4 beautiful input fields wherein the user can enter the values. For example, let's say if I write the same values 100 as the initial deposit amount, the number of years, 1.0 for 0.10 for the annual interest rate, again, the number of interest payments per year 1. And if I click on this button, I should have my final output as $110 over here, right? Right? So let me just click on this button. Oh, is there any problem in my system? I'm not able to see the output. Okay, let's just quickly see our code. All this is the styling stuff, which you can just do it on your own, whatever you guys feel. You can just add different kind of font size, the background color, and the font color, everything. Let's just look at our script, the JavaScript code, right? So here, notice that it's empty. The function definition is empty. So you have to write the code, and only then it would be able to calculate it, right? So this is your own task. I'm just gonna give you some kind of hints. Of course, I've just put the file of the final file for you guys, but I would strongly first suggest you guys to just work on it in the same manner which we did in the last task, and to come up with the final implementation, which just shows our input or the output, right? So over here, it has everything over here in a proper organized manner. You just have to put the stuff wherever it's just asking you. For example, over here, inside of a script tag, if we just see the output, these are the input text fields, right? So same thing, I'm just saying that, hey, I want an input text field of type text or input equal to text, which has an ID called dep and a value. So over here, we say that, okay, on change, right? What is on change exactly? And I'm saying that on change equal to original amount equal to number dot dep dot value. Okay, so there's a lot of information over here, right? So let me just give you the demonstration of this thing. So whenever the user enters any kind of value with the help of the prompt function, let's say I enter the value 12, right? The prompt function by default takes the value in the form of a string. The data type of this value is always a string and not a number, even if the user enters a numerical value. Let's say if the user enters something like, let's say my name, of course, it would be by default in the form of string. But again, my point is to say that even if the user enters any kind of numerical value, by default, the data type of the prompt function is, like when it's taking the input, is a string type. And so whenever we want to perform any kind of mathematical operations on those numbers which we have taken as an input from the user with the help of the prompt function, we got to convert that type from string to a numerical or the number type, right? So for this, we have something called as typecasting. So with the help of typecasting, we can convert the string type to a number type, right? So in typecasting over here, I have something called, let's say, like you guys have noticed this thing in the past recitation lectures, right? We use something called as a number function over here to just convert the type to a number. So in our code, we have used the same thing. I'm saying that, okay, whenever the user will enter the value in our first text field over here, which has an ID called dep, I want that particular value to be converted into a number type, right? So here I'm just using the typecasting number function to just convert that value from string to number. Okay, so this thing is clear, but what is this deep dot value, right? So I'm saying that, okay, whenever the user is writing any kind of value over here, I want it to be displayed over here in front of the user so that the user will be able to see the value which he or she is entering, right? just just imagine how boring or how irresponsive it would be if you are not showing the users the value they are entering. Let's say I'm entering a number called 12, but if you are not able to see that number in your screen in the input field, you won't you it's not very um interactive, right? In terms of if we just speak about user experience, right? So for that, we are using an attribute called as onChange, which just quickly adapts or just fires that movement the user takes or write anything, and it will just show it over here with the help of the small thing which is called dot value. The dot value will quickly grab the value the user is entering with the help of the IDDEP, which we are using for the input field. Again, see, while learning IDs, I told you that IDs are very important, especially in the world of JavaScript. Whenever we are going to use the IDs, basically we use them to just target the HTML elements, right? We use them to access it and to just let our code know that, hey, I'm targeting this particular element, right? So here I'm targeting the input element with the help of its own ID called as DEP over here, and I'm saying that dot value, whatever value that input element has in it, I'm saying that, okay, give me that value and convert it, of course, into a type number, and then I'm just storing it inside the original amount, which is the variable which we have created over here, right? So then yeah, it just simply acts in a similar manner for all the other input text fields. If you want to know more about the onChange HTML event, so you can just take a reference over here. It says that the definition says that the onChange attribute fires the moment when the value of the element is changed, right? So that's it, how it works, right? So you can, of course, just pass a whole function inside the onChange attribute. But for now, so this is the working, like I can just write it anything. So if it's changing, so it can work it accordingly, right? And then after all the stuff, there's a button over here called as calculate total amount, right? So inside this button, of course, in our event listeners recitation last week, we saw something called as on click attribute, right? We pass it to different kind of radio buttons or normal button, right? So we want that there should be some kind of output we want inside this text field once the user presses on this button which says calculate total amount. So how we can achieve that functionality? We implement or write something called as on click. This is the event listener or the attribute which comes under a button, and over here we are going to put our JavaScript code inside the double quotes over here, or you can use a single quote, right? It says put code here. This button calls the function and puts result in total money textbooks rounded to a decimal 2 values, right? So over here, I strongly suggest that you do the same way, the same functionality, right? So for for you guys, you have two things to do from your end. You just have to put your JavaScript code over here inside the on click of attribute, and of course the main function logic, which is the same just as how we did in our like int rate.html example, right? You gotta just put the same stuff over here, like all this same thing. It's fine. You don't have to use the math.run over here because later on we are gonna do it because here it says that round it up to 2 decimal values, right? So that's fine. So you just do it in a similar manner like this. So see, this is already done. Like I've just done it for you guys. So you just have to put the same implementation. We just looked at the meaning of how to just implement the formula of the compound interest over here, it will basically return this value, which is stored inside the total deep variable, right? So that's the thing you have to do from your end to practice it. And over here, if I have to give you a hint, of course, let's say inside that on click event, you just have to put something which will invoke the function. You have to call it, right? You have to call the function. So let's say I create a variable called tot or total or something, let's say total, right? And then you have to call the function name. What's the function name? Total with interest, right? So you have to call this function. Okay, will not allow me. Okay, total with interest. And you have to, of course, pass your 4 parameter values. I'm not writing the parameter values, but notice that just keep it consistent. Whatever the name of the variables you're using, you'll just pass the name of the variables over here. And inside that, after that, you would say that, of course, the other variable which you are using over here, the total money or the input field. Look at this input field over here, right? The last input field. You have to display your final amount, the value inside this input field, right? So we have to target the ID of that particular input field. And now what's the ID? It says tot money, right? So I'm going to target the ID of the last text input field, tot money dot value, because whatever value I want to change the content or output the value, right? So for that we use dot value over here, equal to, let's say if I just want to display a dollar sign, right? So I can write it in a single quote, something called as a dollar, right? Plus the concatenating operator, and again the total over here, this variable, right? So total dot. Now how do you have to round off the values up to 2 positions, the 2 decimal values that I'm leaving for you guys to figure it out, right? So I think this should be a fun example. Of course, I've shared the solution with you of this whole file, after which how it will look. Let me just share it if you want that into it too. Over here. Into it 2. Okay, there's no hyphen, I guess. Right? Awesome. So enter the initial deposit 100. Enter the number of years 1, 10%. The same example so that you just see the correct output. Enter the number of interest 1. Calculate total amount. Whoa, $110, right? So we are able to get, again, see, I can just change the content dynamically for whatever value I want. Let's say if I just enter the number of years as 2, the amount would be changed, $121, right? So it's changing it dynamically without having us to just, of course, working like, it's so smooth, right? Of course, I can just change and play around with the different kind of values, and it's just instantly calculating the compound interest for us. So this is the beauty of JavaScript functions. And if we just combine it with the event-driven approach of JavaScript, we can have such a wonderful form type kind of small implementation of a functionality called as calculate the total compound interest, right? So other than this, you guys can create a lot of different stuff with JavaScript. Suppose, let's see, I ask you guys can have your own calculator. You can do that with the help of JavaScript, right? The code logic is also not that difficult. So there are tons and tons of things you can do out and try to just have fun, play around to just improve your knowledge in the world of JavaScript. And I think we are done for today's recitation. This was a task. Of course, you can just style the page according to your own preferences. Like you can just use the button tags, different background color, large font size, and all those things. So what we did that instead of using the prompt function and the alert functions, we just come up with a good way which would just represent or look visually aesthetic, right? So that's the beauty. And I think in today's recitations, we just covered up the functions, and thank you. So of course, the attendance key for today's recitation would be 940. The secret code key is 940. 940. Okay, so make sure you mark your attendance after this lecture, and I'll be just posting the link of this video, link of the attendance form, and see you guys next week for our week 9 recitation. And during my lab support or office hours, make sure you just connect with me if you have any kind of doubts, questions, or queries. And yeah, that's it for now. All right, guys. Thank you.